Samantha Blake sat rigidly in her chair, her hands tightly clasped beneath the wooden defense table. She forced herself to remain composed as Officer Derek Sullivan recounted his fabricated version of events, his voice steady and authoritative, his badge gleaming under the harsh fluorescent courtroom lights. "I had no choice but to defend myself," Sullivan declared, turning to the jury with a rehearsed look of remorse. "Ms. Blake struck me first. I was simply doing my job." Samantha's attorney, Marcus Green, exhaled slowly, maintaining a calm demeanor. He had warned her this would happen. In courtrooms like these, a police officer's word often carried more weight than that of the accused, especially when the accused was a black woman challenging systemic corruption. Judge Eleanor Whitman, an older white woman with an inscrutable expression, peered over her glasses at the witness stand. "Continue, Officer Sullivan." Sullivan nodded solemnly. The scene was chaotic. Protesters were everywhere. I approached Ms. Blake to disperse the crowd peacefully, but she became aggressive. She pushed me and attempted to grab my baton. I had to subdue her. A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Samantha's nails dug into her palm. Every word was a lie, but the jury seemed to be buying it. The truth of that day was starkly different. Samantha had been covering a peaceful demonstration against police brutality, her camera in hand, when Sullivan had shoved her to the ground without warning. He had pressed his knee into her back, confiscated her phone, and later charged her with assault. Now, he was twisting reality to protect himself. In the gallery, Samantha's best friend, Nina Douglas, sat on the edge of her seat, gripping the armrests so tightly her knuckles turned white. She knew the truth. But truth alone often wasn't enough in courtrooms like this. Marcus rose smoothly, buttoning his suit jacket. "Officer Sullivan, let me clarify. Ms. Blake, an unarmed journalist, was the aggressor against you, an armed officer." Sullivan leaned back slightly, feigning offense. "Correct." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "And yet multiple witnesses report a different version of events." Sullivan shrugged, the picture of calm under pressure. "Witnesses can be mistaken. Things happen fast during protests." Marcus tapped his pen against the table. "You claim there's no video footage of the incident?" "None that I'm aware of," Sullivan replied without hesitation. Samantha bit her lip. The footage did exist. She was sure of it, but by the time she got her phone back, it had been wiped clean. Judge Whitman glanced at Marcus. "Do you have further questions for the witness?" Marcus exchanged a look with Samantha before shaking his head. "Not at this time, Your Honor." "Very well. We'll take a short recess." As the judge banged the gavel, signaling the break, Samantha exhaled sharply, her heart racing. "He's too comfortable," Marcus muttered, sinking into his chair beside her. "He's done this before. I can feel it." "I know," Samantha whispered. "But what if we can't prove it?" Nina leaned forward, her voice urgent. "We might be able to. Someone just sent me a message. They found a video." Samantha's head snapped around. "What?" Nina's eyes sparkled with fierce determination. "It's from a bystander. It shows everything." 30 minutes later, Samantha sat back in her seat, a faint glimmer of hope igniting in her chest. As the trial resumed, Marcus stood tall before the court. "Your Honor, we have new evidence that directly contradicts Officer Sullivan's testimony." The room buzzed with sudden energy. The prosecutor, Richard Alden, shot to his feet. "Objection! This evidence wasn't submitted before the trial." Marcus kept his voice calm and steady. "It was just uncovered, Your Honor. This video proves that Officer Sullivan's entire testimony is a fabrication." Judge Whitman frowned. "I want to see it." Nina handed Marcus her tablet, and he connected it to the courtroom's large screen. The video played, captured from a bystander's phone. It showed Officer Sullivan approaching Samantha without provocation, grabbing her wrist, shoving her to the ground, and pinning her with unnecessary force. At no point did she attack him. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Samantha's breath caught in her throat as she watched. She had known the truth, but seeing it laid bare for everyone, watching how effortlessly Sullivan had lied, made her blood run cold. Sullivan's face drained of color. That footage is taken out of context, he stammered. Marcus didn't flinch. Out of context? Officer Sullivan, do you deny that this is you in the video? Sullivan's jaw clenched. I know, but Marcus let the silence stretch before delivering the blow. Then explain this. He pointed to the screen, where Sullivan was clearly seen pushing Samantha down without cause. The prosecutor tried to intervene again. Your Honor, this is highly unorthodox. Judge Whitman silenced him with a wave. Enough, Mr. Alden. She turned to Sullivan. Officer, do you have an explanation? Sullivan swallowed hard. I don't recall it happening that way. Marcus seized the moment. So your memory is faulty? Or were you lying then? Or are you lying now? The courtroom fell into heavy silence. Sullivan fidgeted, his composure crumbling. Judge Whitman's voice was icy. Officer Sullivan, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully. A long, tense pause. I may have misremembered some details, Sullivan finally muttered. A collective murmur swept through the room. The jury's expressions shifted from belief to doubt. As court adjourned for the day, Samantha felt the power dynamic shift. She had been moments away from being crushed by a corrupt system, but now Sullivan was the one scrambling. The next morning, the air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation. Sullivan entered, his back stiff, his jaw clenched, but the fear in his eyes was undeniable. His badge no longer felt like a shield. It was a target. Marcus rose smoothly. Officer Sullivan, yesterday you claimed MS. Blake assaulted you and that no video evidence existed. We now know that's false. So, were you lying then, or are you lying now? Sullivan hesitated, panic flashing across his face. I made a mistake. It was chaotic. I misinterpreted. Marcus didn't let up. You tackled an unarmed journalist to the ground, filed a false report, and committed perjury. That's not a misinterpretation, Officer Sullivan. That's a crime. The pressure was building. Sullivan's eyes darted toward the prosecution table, seeking help, but Alden was stone-faced. The prosecutor knew his star witness was beyond saving. Tell me, officer, Marcus pressed. Was this truly an isolated incident, or is this part of a larger pattern? The silence that followed was deafening. Then, the courtroom doors opened, and Officer Carlos Vega, another member of the force, stepped inside. Judge Whitman adjusted her glasses. Mr. Green? Marcus gestured toward Vega. Your Honor, Officer Vega has information regarding a pattern of misconduct involving Officer Sullivan and others within the department. Vega took the stand, his face lined with conflict, but his voice steady. I've worked in the department for 12 years, and I've seen things, officers rewriting reports, fabricating charges, especially targeting black and brown individuals. I should have spoken up sooner. The room erupted. Judge Whitman slammed her gavel, demanding order. Marcus leaned in. Do you have proof? Vega nodded solemnly. I do. Copies of altered reports, internal emails. There's a history here. Sullivan paled, his last defenses crumbling. This is a setup, he shouted, but no one was listening. Judge Whitman's voice cut through the chaos. Officer Sullivan, you are now under investigation for perjury and falsifying police reports. Mr. Alden, I expect the district attorney's office to take immediate action. Handcuffs clicked around Sullivan's wrists as he was led away. The trial wasn't over, but the tides had turned. Outside the courthouse, Nina grabbed Samantha's arm. Do you realize what just happened? This isn't just about you. This is going to blow everything wide open. Marcus nodded. The department won't be able to bury this. But Samantha knew the fight was far from over. They had exposed one corrupt officer, but the system that protected him still stood. She squared her shoulders. Then let's make sure the whole world knows the truth. The war had just begun,